So welcome to this tutorial. I am Kiri Glette and my colleague Ege de Bruin. We are both from University of Oslo, and we also have, these people have contributed to the tutorial, so have been joining us previous years to make material. Especially Frank, he's the mastermind behind the software system that we're using. But also Emma and Kai have contributed significantly. So we thought we will divide this tutorial into like two main parts in a way. So like first the theoretical part, we'll go through some typical challenges and topics of evolving robot bodies and brains. And then we have the second part with a practical demo. So Ege will walk you through our software system and show you how you can hopefully easily get some robot evolution experiments up and running. It's possible to try to follow along. I don't know if any one of you are interested in doing that or have already looked a bit at the software system. No? Okay, yeah. But if you are interested in doing it, you can there's some time in the break, so we'll have a break between these two parts, and you can launch your system on your laptop and download it, and maybe you can try to follow along. So then I think we'll just jump into the first part on evolving robots. So why we do that and how we do that. So we'll cover the topics. There's a lot of things to cover, so we'll go a little bit in the surface, and then there's room for questions if you want to discuss further on specific topics. Hi, welcome to the tutorial. So, evolutionary robotics. So why do we do this? Of course, we're very inspired by what's possible in nature, what natural evolution has given us. Like, for example, animals that are super fast, highly specialized, and animals that have interesting shapes and specialized also for their tasks. And like these fins, for example, of this Dumbo octopus makes that it can propel itself in a very energy efficient way. And animals like centipedes, very kind of robust. And if they lose some legs, that's not a problem. It can adapt to many different types of terrain and situations. So that's inspiration from nature. And then we have like future robots. So people doing bio-inspired robots, they are coming up with new types of materials, actuators, and so on to make new robots that are more flexible, more reconfigurable, like modular robots. And also like I like this example of the foam robot, where you can imagine like a team of robots where one of them has a foam gun or some kind of 3D printer. They go on missions together and maybe they encounter obstacles or some of them get damaged, and then you can kind of come up with new solutions on the fly on how to fix that. And I think also there's this nice figure from Doncier's paper about evolutionary robotics being somehow in the middle between contributing to engineering science, but also contributing to biology. So it can help, like our simulations can help, and also like real robots can help in trying to understand nature and biology. And of course, in the ALIFE context, this biology extends also to ALIFE to kind of learn about life as could be. And it's important to underline that in this tutorial, we want to focus on the co-evolution of body and control together. So there's a lot of work in evolutionary robotics where there is a fixed robot shape or robot body, and evolution is performed on the control of the robot only. But we're interested in this context to look at how like this interplay between the body and the brain evolves together over time. And of course, a great inspiration for us has been this book by Rolf Pfeiffer and Josh Bongard on how the body shapes the way we think, which nicely outlines, it's a recommended reading, how like we would like to go away from these kind of very engineered fixed platforms where you need to do a lot of computations to like achieve locomotion, and it's not so stable and say robust. Whereas like in animals, in nature, there's a lot of more like interplay between the body and the brain. So like there's not so much need for that much kind of thinking in order to locomote, because lots of that is built into the body in terms of muscles and flexibility and so on. And that's even more interesting to see in insects, how they really just locomote without very much complexity. So it's a bit old video now, but I wanted to show you how we have tried to do this in our lab maybe 10 years ago. A typical example of how this could be done in an evolutionary robotics context. You can see simulations of robots. In this context, we wanted to evolve robot bodies that followed certain kind of developmental rules on the robot body. And you can see like many different solutions were tested out in a simulator. In the beginning, only with random control systems and random bodies. And as kind of this evolutionary algorithm progressed, solutions got gradually better. In the end, we could take some of the best ones and 3D print them and test them out in the lab. And then also we get into problems such as like transferring the robot from the simulation to the real world. There's a lot of kind of things that have like changed, at least like slightly, and that might affect the performance of the robot quite much. It's called the reality gap, or sim to real, it's also known as that. So this sums up this kind of whole evolutionary robotics process, where you can see like an evolutionary algorithm feeds some kind of genome or solution descriptions into a kind of, say, decoding process, where you go from the genotype decode to a robot blueprint that can then either be instantiated as a virtual robot or as a real robot and tested. And then you get some kind of behavior of that robot, and you can give that back to the evolutionary algorithm in terms of behavior descriptors, features of the robot, and maybe some then, or at least some fitness function or like a reward that tells something about how good you think the robot is performing. And then there is an evolutionary loop that iterates and tests out many robots and gets in the end to a good result. There could also be a learning process on this side. It's like for every new robot body you test out, you might want to do some learning, be it reinforcement learning or some other learning. So there could be this kind of nested loop, and Eggy will get back to that later on. So how to represent these robot bodies and controllers? So try to cover like briefly a bit of different approaches on this. And so the first part is then like dividing into these two main categories of direct and indirect encodings. And in direct, there's a one-to-one mapping between the genome and the resulting robot. And in indirect, there's some kind of recipe or a program that builds a robot from the genome. So it's a more intricate process. Let's show that with some examples. So if we look at the one here on the bottom left, the Lipson and Pollack experiment, the Golem project, there was a direct encoding of the robot body. So each like value in the genome corresponded to like some coordinates and lengths of these struts in the robot. And there was I think there was a direct also directly coded neural network that controlled motors attached to these rods. And then there was the Carl Sims work, for example, this one, where there was a kind of a graph encoding, so such that like you describe the robot as a kind of like nodes and recursiveness, so that like you can have some segment nodes and yeah, so like body segments and leg segments, and these can repeat like a number of times, and then you get interesting robot shape like these that exploit symmetry and repetition. There have also been experiments using L system, Lindenmayer systems, where you can get quite interesting shapes from these kind of rewriting rules. Another interesting example is this one from Auerbach and Bongard, where a kind of a CPPN, or a pattern producing network, was used. So a kind of function that was evolved, and you can query that at different points in space to get some kind of some value that can be thresholded and to give you like a surface in space. And then you can make a robot shape out of that. Yeah, so for control methods, there are also like various options to choose from. So centralized control methods are the most common ones, like for example, a neural network that controls all inputs and all outputs. And if you add actuators, then you also like add some outputs of the neural network, and this is evolved and controls the whole robot in a centralized manner. It makes a lot of sense. But there are also people who are looking into decentralized control approaches, inspired by nature. For example, some experiments have been done by looking at salamanders and how very simple control units, like small neural modules in a way, can be attached to every like actuator segment or joint, and have very simple functionality, but still generate very interesting and adaptive behaviors. And these can then be coupled along the body to create interesting interplay. There's also a choice you have to make if it's like an open loop controller, if it's just some kind of system that generates oscillatory functions without really taking sensor inputs. Or you can have a more like a closed loop fashion where you have a lot of sensing inputs and use that to have a more tight control loop and integrate also like inputs from terrain and things that might be interesting to include in your control loop. Also, there have been interesting examples of these type of embodied control approaches where there is not really any neural network controlling the robot, but there are like in this case of the soft robot, that like each voxel of the body of the robot, like each element has like a function. It can be passive, or it can expand and contract and so on. And like then the control is a function of how you put the body parts together. So yeah, just some kind of thoughts on what you should choose. So that's definitely like entirely up to like what you want to explore, like in your experiments. Many people argue that indirect encodings can give you much more like, say, symmetric, regular types of robot bodies. You can kind of more easily get to interesting shapes and like, say, larger robots. So in that way, it's very good. But direct encoding can sometimes also be just as good. And if you want something that's a little bit more irregular, highly specialized, maybe some kind of optimization of a certain part or something like that, maybe a direct encoding could be even better to use. So it depends a little bit on your problem. And also indirect encodings might suffer from, say, biases in like if you use an L system, for example, there's like quite a lot of dynamics when you unpack this, and it might be difficult to search for, say, like the types of solutions you want. Just a little example on comparing these types of approaches by Frank some years ago, where we tested different encodings, some direct encodings for the body, and also some indirect encodes. So you can see here, like in this direct encoding example, that yeah, the robot body gets a little bit kind of unstructured, but still it has a kind of like an interesting solution, and it can give room for quite, say, like creative approaches to your problem. Then we tested a simple L system where you easily get kind of longer robots, like repeated elements. So there is some symmetry there. But here the control system wasn't really that sophisticated, so there was no real communication between the body elements. But we fixed that by using a central pattern generator approach, where like there was some kind of signal propagation between the modules. And then we kind of combined these two into something that seems quite like natural and lifelike. So I think we can take some questions now before we pass to the next part. Anything that made you curious or questions? Yeah?
How bad does the transfer from sim to real go for you guys in particular? Where do the real hiccups happen?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So like how significant this sim to real transfer problem is. I think we've had quite some different experiments, different scenarios, and I would say it's quite present. So we haven't really done that much of kind of domain randomization or noise injection techniques to combat it. We have looked at a little bit of different approaches, like learning in the real world, for example, after you deploy the robot. But we've seen depending quite much on the robot shape. So I think that's an interesting point, that like when you do evolution of both morphology and control, so when you instantiate these robots, it gets even more complicated when you also have new shapes. So some of the robots' shapes have been quite bad when transferring them, while others have been quite okay. So yeah, it's quite interesting.
There's a question online.
There's a question online, great.
So we'll say, what about co-design of parts of the robot, for example, end effectors, to adapt to certain tasks on the base body?
Yeah, so in case that was not, or do the online people see those questions in the chat? Or do I need to read it aloud?
I think they do.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, co-design of parts of the robot, that's something we haven't looked very much into. I think there has been some work on this. Definitely has been some work. What examples come to mind? I think there has been some work on robot grippers, maybe tailoring them to specific types of object, for example. So you can like try to evolve grippers and some kind of simple control that are very good and optimized at grabbing certain types of objects. That's one example that comes to my mind. And also, yeah, I think we have one example further on that there is some design. No, I think I left that example out, but like design of robot legs so that they get good traction in various types of terrains, for example. Okay, should we one more question?
Yeah. Any fundamental difference with the review today? Does any fundamental difference with the review today?
I didn't quite understand fundamental difference with the review today.
Yeah.
Yeah, between the whole body and the parts only. So I think maybe the difference might be that there is potentially like the control part of this is typically evaluated on kind of when you use all the parts on the whole body. So I think, well, maybe it boils down when you evolve only parts to kind of like a part design thing, and maybe like there is less. Like, I mean, you could look at that isolated, like you could optimize for certain shapes, for example, and then you would have fitness function only on the shape, or you could evaluate how this shape performs. But yeah, I think it's a little bit kind of floating. It really depends on the task. Yeah. Okay.
We have another
Could be another question. Let's see.
by Jordan. With billions going into LLMs and humanoid robots, what are the prospects for evolutionary robotics to have real world impact?
That's a good question. I think that fits very well for the kind of like when Ege has finished his part also, and like when we get to the end of the theory part, I think that's a very good question to say for that, so we kind of don't lose too much flow on this part. So let's take that question and discussion soon. Yeah. Great, then we move on to Ege.
Thank you.
So I'll try to like get the camera to take it, and then
follow me. Oh.
Still good.
Yes. Okay. So as Kira already mentioned, I will talk about the challenges and of evolving body and control together. I will explain what the challenge is and how it has been tried to be dealt with. So to start from the bottom, when we try to optimize robots, we evolve where we try to evolve robots to optimize them, we evolve two components, the morphology and the control. This makes it to have two components to optimize, like in two different components, and this can often lead to early stagnation because new robot morphologies have not been optimized properly to find optimized control. So I will give two illustrations to try to emphasize this. This is the first one. So let's say you have a parent robot and has created two offspring. One of the offspring robots looks very similar to the parent robot and the other is very different. The other might potentially have a better performance because it has more actuators. However, it requires completely different control than the parent robot. The top robot looks very similar to the parent robot, so it might already have optimized control and will therefore be prioritized over other robots who have not had optimized control. Another illustration to illustrate this. So see this as a morphology search space where the vertical axis is the potential performance of the morphology. We have optimized control for this robot. This robot has a higher potential. The right robot, I say this, but the people on Zoom don't know where I'm pointing towards. So the robot on the right has a higher potential performance, but because its actual control has not been optimized yet, its actual performance is low, and it will therefore be discarded without optimized control. This local to global optimum problem is well known in evolutionary algorithms in general. However, these two components, an additional challenge arises that even though we have found a low global optimum morphology-wise, it will still be discarded because its control is not optimized. And now I hope this clears up the challenge, the main challenge of evolving body and control, so two components together. I will go into ways to try to deal with this. One of them is what Kiran previously already mentioned, is to separate the optimization of the two parts. So we still have an evolutionary algorithm evolving neuromorphology. This is usually an evolutionary algorithm, but it can be any other optimization algorithm. But now for every new robot morphology, we optimize the control. This way, we try to find the optimal control for every morphology, so it will have a decent chance in selection. A learning control can be any algorithm you can think of that could optimize a robot control. Think of an evolutionary algorithm, maybe Bayesian optimization, or for a neural network control, reinforcement learning works well. This does come with the challenge that every time you create a new robot, you have to re-evaluate it multiple times due to the learning process. So this has a consequence that in simulation, you would have less robots to optimize, fewer robots to optimize. This is one example of the robot we've seen before. You can evolve robots in simulation and then let them learn outside of simulation. So, for example, first do it in simulation and then check the real world performance to see if it can learn in real life as well. I slightly went into this. So if you if you do evolutionary robotics in real life, there are two things that you have to do. You have to build the robots and then evaluate them. In real life, building the robots takes more time than evaluating them. In that case, it makes a lot of sense to do learning because such an evaluation of a robot is quick compared to building a robot. So adding learning to evolution then shows a huge benefit. So this is compared over generations or type of number of morphologies evaluated. And we can see that after learning, the blue line is way better than just evolving the robots. However, a lot of the experiments nowadays are done in simulation, and there, this building robots and evaluating robots, the timescale is reversed. In simulation, it takes like a millisecond to build a robot, but the actual evaluation takes a few seconds. So in that case, it might make more sense to compare evolution only to evolution and learning on function evaluations and not on generations, because every generation, if you add learning, has more function evaluations. And then you see, if you compare the green line, which is without learning, and the blue and red lines, which is with learning, but two separate learning budgets. If you compare over morphologies evaluated or generations, yes, the benefit of learning is very clear, but compared over function evaluations, this benefit becomes much less. One way to then improve evolution and learning would be to transfer experience from robot to robot. Because let's say a parent robot has learned a very good control, the offspring robot might use this learned control instead of just starting from scratch all the time. This is often denoted as Lamarckian inheritance, where offspring robots inherit control parameters from its parent, learned control parameters from its parent. Another way to do this is something called social learning, where it's not necessarily from parent to offspring, but any robot can transfer to any robot in any way you can think of. The main issue of this is the body mismatch. So let's say you have optimized a robot who has 2 sensors and 2 actuators. A new robot might have also 2 sensors, but the sensors are placed differently. And the same counts for the actuators. If you have a control for the robot as a whole, this might give challenges because you don't know which weights of the neural network, for example, in the control you want to transfer. There are several ways to deal with this. One example here is to just keep the network weights of the sensors that you already have. The hidden layers stay the same. And you add random weights for the sensors that are added, and you remove the weights for the sensors that are removed. So I talked a bit about evolution and learning as a way to deal with the challenge of evolving body and control together. Another way to do this is to just focus on the diversity in morphologies. So again, this example of a parent robot who creates a very different and very simple robot. You can do a quality diversity approach. I will go more into that sooner. Or innovation protection, where new robot morphologies are protected or kept into the population because they are new, not because they are better, but because they are new. So in this case, the completely new looking robot is morphologically diverse and will therefore be protected due to its morphological innovation. And then this case would be the qualitative solution. And to go more into quality diversity, the idea of quality diversity is to create a diverse set of high-performing solutions. And we want to emphasize this way both the quality and the diversity of the solutions. And I will go into two ways to do this. One example is novelty search with local competition. So we use the exploration of novelty search. So as a whole, robots are selected on novelty. So as many novel robots as possible. And if you have found robots that are similar to each other, those have local competition with each other. So robots do not compete on performance if they are too different from each other, but if they're very similar, then you pick the best of those similar robots. This ensures a diverse population, but then only the best of certain species are kept. Another way to do this is in a map elite approach, where you keep a map of solutions. For example, in this case, you have voxel robots that have been optimized, and you have a map which shows the percentage of bone tissue and the percentage of the voxels that has filled the box. And then for every bin in the map, you save the best robot, and then you get a new robot and optimize it. This way, it's to ensure that optimized that population diversity is preserved, but we still keep the best of every bin. The challenge here, however, is to how do you define this diversity measure, and every definition of diversity measure will lead to different results. And finally, I will go into some other challenges to address this body control problem. Some other approaches, I mean. One way is to do multi-body control, where you have a single controller which is able to quickly teach or make a robot learn how to move. For example, in this work by Merton and Cheney, you first get a diverse set of robots purely on diversity, so on novelty. These robots, you do optimize all these robots, and you use this optimized control of the diverse set of robots to teach a single controller a diverse to control, and this single controller can then be used to kickstart new controllers. Another way to deal with this is to use modular controllers instead of a global controller. remember what I said before. One of the challenges, for example, with transferring experience is that a robot with a different body might require a completely different architecture of control. If you use modular controllers where every part of the robot has its own control, you deal with this problem. And in this example, it shows that the difference between a modular and a global control, it shows the benefit of using a modular control in evolving robots, while this is not shown if you have a single robot. For a single robot, it might be beneficial to have a global control, so a single control for the whole robot. A modular control is more beneficial for evolving robots because robots can share experience more easily. So this is about evolving robots and body together, the challenges and how to potentially deal with them. Are there any questions about this part? Yes.
I got a bit lost.
Sorry.
I got a bit lost, sorry, in the difference between evolution and learning. So when do a robot evolve, or when it learns, or what is the overlap between evolution and learning, or differences?
This can be in basically any way that you can think of, but how I often do it is you have one loop that just evolves the morphology of the robot, just pure an evolutionary algorithm to change bodies. And then every time you create offspring, you optimize the control for the robot. So it's kind of an inner loop that for every body, for every morphology, optimizes the control. And then after optimization, you evaluate it again, and that will then be the fitness value. So it will not be the fitness value before learning, it will be after learning. I hope that clears it up.
Yeah, so I get how it evolves. There's
Yes.
an evolution loop, replicatory, but what it learns? What is the actual dynamic that is considered as a learning?
Yes, okay. So let's say these parts of this robot are actuators that are controlled by a neural network. In the optimization loop, you just fix the morphology, it will stay the same, and then you only optimize the control. This can be using an evolutionary algorithm, but for example, using reinforcement learning, you start out randomly, and then you evaluate it multiple times with a fixed morphology in the evaluation environment that you want it to be. And then hopefully it will have a better control than when you start out randomly.
Right.
So in this case, so the morphology and control genotype are separated. So you only evolve the morphology genome here, and the control genome you evolve here.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you go into more detail into the innovation protection? How does it work?
Yes. So in the innovation protection, in this case, they don't use evolution and learning. They just use evolution, where in every mutation, it's either the body that changes or the control that changes. So it's not both at the same time, but either or. And the selection procedure is not only the performance, it is a multi-objective optimization, where the other objective is morphological age. So you want to minimize morphological age. Every time you create a robot with a changing morphology, so a changing body mutation, this new body will have an age of 0, and you want to minimize age as well. So that will be preferred that way. If you create a control mutation, then both, so if you only mutate the control, for both the new robots, the age is incremented with 1 because the morphology hasn't changed. So, and the generation is 1 further. So you optimize both for morphological age, minimizing it, and performance, maximizing or minimizing if your performance wants.
It's a couple of questions also.
Okay.
What are candidates to measure diversity? Question mark. Complexity metrics?
So one example here is, I mean, in general, it can be any morphological diversity measure you can think of. But for example, here you have the percentage of bone tissue. So in voxel robot, you can differentiate between active voxels and solid voxels, or voxels that are not being actuated. These are then called bone tissues. And then you can use a bone percentage as the diversity measure. Can you maybe add a bit?
Yeah, what did you
Like other?
Yeah. So which one did you mention? Because I was thinking about something else.
Oh, the percentage of bone tissue. So
yeah. I mean, it's really depends on what kind of robots you're evolving. It's like, for example, if you evolve some kind of graph based robots with kind of body segments and leg segments and so on, you might want to try to find a measure of the difference between different robot bodies in terms of like changes in the graph, in addition to the length of the legs and so on. So you might want to look at algorithms for calculating the tree edit distance, where maybe like changing part of a leg has a larger weight, so it gives kind of a more distance than just changing the length of the leg. So that's also something you could put into like a distance metric that can again be used then in the diversity measure. So those are some examples. Then there was a question of if complexity metrics. Yeah, I think definitely complexity of a robot shape somehow, if you manage to define that, that could also easily be one dimension on this kind of map elites, for example. Another question? Yeah. Non-morphological metrics to consider. Yeah, well, you could definitely think about, say, like behavioral metrics in terms of how the robot locomotes as well as metrics. So definitely. Usually these metrics are defined on like, say, the phenotypical characteristics of the robot instead of genotype characteristics. I think there was one more question. What about learning multiple behaviors for individual morphology, not just locomotion? Do you want to take that one again? Or maybe, yeah, but I have some thoughts on that. So I think that's a very good point. I think definitely it should be done because if you just evaluate on one single task, it's very likely that you get maybe a bit too specialized robot. So if you could evaluate on many different tasks, that would, I think, be much better for trying to get more general morphologies. But I think most people don't do it just because it adds even more kind of expense to the evaluation loop, and it's not kind of the simplest approach. So I think while it should be investigated, there hasn't been that much investigation of that yet. So yeah, I think that would be the answer. Should look into it. Maybe we should move on then. Should I try to? Yes. And then I need to go. So now I will talk a little bit about kind of going or building blocks and so on for these robots. So I think, I mean, there's been so much work in this field on very different, say, abstraction levels or kind of levels of virtuality or realness. So I try to kind of make a kind of axis where say how much real are the robots in a way. And like going from on the left, you have things that only exist in simulations, like virtual creatures. Could be even like this continuous cellular automata. It could be these kind of virtual creatures that clearly are very difficult to produce in a real world setting. And then we have seen lots of examples recently on voxel-based robots. And they could, in theory, or like it is possible to produce them in practice. So we've seen some examples of these silicon molds, for example, of voxel robots, and we've also seen these very interesting xenobots. But usually these instantiations are quite complex to produce, and it's only kind of a low resolution robots we have seen so far. But maybe in the future, these will be even easier to instantiate in the real world. Then there are like some works on modular robots that are quite possible indeed to create in the real world, but there might be a little bit of work to get to that. And on the right, robots that are like, say, fully operational in real hardware. So it's like which one to choose, that depends a little bit on what you want to explore. I'll get a bit back to that. And then there's the evolution axis, like how much of the evolution goes on in a simulator versus how much of evolution, how much kind of real world samples are you getting. So like with which virtual creatures, there is only like evolution in the simulation, and there is no instantiation at all in the real world. And then we have this picture from the Golem project. So that was like the first project that took the result of simulated robots from a physics simulator and 3D printed and produced these robots to actually work. The end result worked in the real world. There might be some approaches, like kind of hybrid approaches, where there is a lot of simulation, but there are also like now and then some samples from the real world to calibrate and kind of update your model. And then there are like some experiments, like you can see all the way to the right, where evolution is only going on in the real world. That gives you much less samples to do your experiments because it's kind of expensive to do a real world evaluation. But you get a very kind of real result, so you can capture interactions from the real world. So like these two examples, like the one on the top is from our lab, where the robot could slowly reconfigure the length of its legs so that you could test out different morphologies in that sense. And the example on the bottom is from Fumiya Ida's lab. So Broadbeck, they used a robot arm and some hot glue to put prefabricated modules together and create new combinations of robots. But I mean, it's absolutely interesting to look at simulation alone. It can give quite interesting insights. For example, virtual creatures can give lots of interesting ALIFE results, like studying, like say, different species that result from evolution. And there was this very interesting paper by Auerbach again on how like a complexity of evolved robot shapes correlate with the complexity of the environment. Yeah, so this, by the way, is one of these examples on evolving kind of just the shape of a body part to be used on a real robot, on the bottom right there, from Collins. So yeah, if you want to test your robots in the real world, there is, of course, that's good. It's like it could be used for something useful in the real world. But you have to be aware also of this reality gap challenge. So if you did all your evolution in a simulator, results might be fine-tuned for exactly that simulator and exactly your parameters of friction, motor force, and so on. And you might get anything from kind of zero movement on the real robot to something that's kind of fairly close. So that's a challenge in itself. And there are various techniques to combat that problem. Yeah, finally, real world evolution. The real advantage of that is that you can capture effects of the real world that are very hard to simulate. For example, in this experiment with our self-reconfigurable robots, we could evolve locomotion for, say, different surfaces that had like slightly different friction properties. That would be quite hard to simulate, and we would see then that evolution found different body shapes for the different surfaces. But the disadvantage of this is that it takes a really long time, and also unless your robot platform is very robust, there is some like wear and tear of the robot, and like properties of the robot system may change over time. It may, like, say, heat up and you get different properties. So like your evolution is maybe not so stable anymore. So you need to consider that when you're evolving. Yes, okay. There. Building blocks, soft components are very popular, especially in simulation. Also, modular robots are very popular because they have like this property of being possible to produce, and yeah, it's a kind of a very interesting scenario. Then you have, so like you could say that modular robots are kind of coarse-grained, reconfigurable substrates. But people have also been looking at, for example, Lego as building blocks. So it's maybe like a more medium-grained reconfigurability or substrate, because you can do more kind of intricate design. Takes a bit more time to build, maybe, but I think it's an interesting type of platform. And then you have the kind of fully custom manufactured robots, where you have like full control over the shapes evolved, and you can 3D print them and get exactly what you want. This may take the longest time to produce, but it also gives you kind of more control. So I think it's not like any approach is better necessarily, but it depends on what you want to research and what kind of robots you are looking at. So yeah, things like wear and tear, build time, robustness, and so on are things to consider. When it comes to simulations, then it's been very popular in the past to use rigid-bodied physics simulations, and that's also still very popular. But there are also like other types of simulators, like say like finite element type methods that you can be used to simulate soft and hard materials together. Like you have this VoxCAD has been a very popular simulator for doing these voxel robots. Or you can have some kind of mass spring damper systems like this one on the right, and you can do like also like very kind of high precision, high fidelity simulators with finite element methods, where you can do really kind of advanced things. Could be very useful if you are somehow evolving, say, shapes or like strength of a shape or something like that. But they also take a long time for the evaluations. And then there are like wrappers around this, such that you can like more easily use this for robot simulation. Like, for example, Gazebo is this simulation system, the wrapper in ROS, and NVIDIA has this Isaac engine and so on. And also game-centric engines. We'll get back to that. I think there's a lot of interesting things on the horizon. Like now, GPU-enabled simulation is the new thing, and you can have really kind of high, lots of components simulated, very interesting fluid effects, and like this super impressive video of high precision solving of rigid body interactions demonstrated by NVIDIA. And this opens up a lot of new possibilities for simulation. I think there's like lots of potential for body-brain co-design and morphology evolution using these new simulator properties. And you can have like use frameworks like Mujoko with GPU acceleration. Voxcraft is a thing that enables GPU for voxel simulations, and you have all things from NVIDIA. One example, maybe was it from last year, using I think at least some GPU enabled simulations and doing differentiable approaches, physics simulation, for generating quite interesting mass brain systems. So these are a bit more kind of different to program, but I think there's a lot of interesting things to look at here. But right now, there has usually been this problem of not so many standard approaches when evolving morphology and control. It's like there has been many of these like clear benchmarks when it comes to evolving control for robots or learning control, like all these gym approaches, for example, like the cheetah and walker and all those things, but maybe not so much for body and brain evolution. Recently, there was the Evo Gym was released, which lets you quite easily get up and running, starting evolving soft robots. And that's been hugely popular because it was like so easily to get started on that. So that's nice. There's maybe not so many standards when it comes to evolving, say, rigid body types of systems. So I think that's quite interesting also, because it's a challenge that people in this field, they use a lot of energy on just creating their simulation engine and coupling it with evolutionary algorithms. And related to that question, why don't you test on multiple behaviors and so on? Like, why is there always the robot moving on a flat plane? Maybe because the students have limited time, they need to get something up and running, and then finally when you have a flat plane and a robot that can move around, you kind of stick with that because you need to go on to your experiment. And like you spend so much time on implementation, so it would be nice to have a more kind of easy to use components to do these kind of experiments in a more standardized and easy to start type of manner. Okay, then before the demo, like, we can take some questions and then we do like maybe a 5-minute break after that, right? I think we can start with the one that we left. So I think there was like, is there any room for evolutionary robotics, or like what's the point of evolutionary robotics when billions are spent on humanoid robots and LLMs? So I think that's it's always interesting to discuss this. I think, well, one thing I reflected a bit on is you could say like this thing of creativity. So I think like LLMs, they're good at interpolating, and you have also like these large foundation models that are really good at getting solutions for the things they are trained on. But maybe there's something about this evolution of morphology and control that maybe humanoids shouldn't be the target here, but rather like finding optimized designs with new types of actuators that are actually like, new problems that haven't been explored, and there are no like existing solutions for them. So I think in this case, there are not so many examples to follow. And I think in this case, evolutionary algorithms could have their role in coming up with new things instead of interpolating. So that's one take, but maybe other people have ideas or opinions on that as well. Any questions from the audience? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm interested specifically in mapping to like real organisms. And I guess the questions I have are related to is evolutionary algorithms useful in fine tuning things like muscle parameters and things like that, or then mapping to more biological real, so, I've heard other arguments that you should work with differentiable things or reinforcement learning, but like sort of what's the benefit specifically, if there is one, towards using evolutionary algorithms and converging to existing morphology.
Yeah, so the question is around evolutionary algorithms versus differentiable solutions and reinforcement learning and so on, and especially in mapping to biological systems.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't reflected so much on this kind of mapping to biological systems, but I think like when you say like fine tuning, then maybe it sounds like evolutionary algorithms might not be kind of the first thing to go to, since like they're more like of this exploratory nature. There's some works lately on kind of this nested approach where, like Ege talked about, there's a lot of learning for each new robot body, and people use evolutionary algorithms to come up with kind of new body designs, but they are quite different. And then there is this reinforcement learning stage that kind of tunes the controller for each of these new bodies.
Yeah.
And also this aspect of differentiable simulators, I think that's also changing things quite a bit. And we haven't looked so much into that yet, but it's definitely very exciting. And I think that's something to explore more.
Cool.
I think there was maybe one more question on Zoom. So there was one question if there are like alternatives to 3D printing, so like other types of substrates or hardware. So I think we covered maybe like you could say like modular robots. It's like a slightly different approach. And there is this Xenobots. I don't think we did show so much on that one, but people are actually able to use living tissue to assemble like real-world instantiations of these evolved voxel robots. So that's of course like a very interesting example of using something different than 3D printing. Also using this silicon molds is another approach that has been explored. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the benefits of using evolution is that it's so pleasantly parallelizable. And I was curious about, as you're talking about standards, do you know of any standards for packages people have come up with for doing computation across like a giant data center or disparate computers, doing island models or sharing independent computations?
Yeah, so you're asking if maybe like more on the evolutionary algorithm side, if there are like good approaches standardized in a way for parallel.
And the reason I ask is because doing stuff like this has always been the bottleneck, because a simulation will take some amount of time.
Yeah.
And it usually requires some amount of resources.
Yeah.
To go, okay, maybe we can do 10 agents, maybe 100 agents, depending how efficient it is on a
Yeah.
single node. But you really need to do a big population.
Yeah.
And so now we're starting to think about multiple cores, multiple processing units, and how do you then communicate and aggregate information?
Yeah, I think that's a big topic in itself, this part. I think of course, like for example, the map elites that Ege talked about, so it has this kind of like inherent parallelism in a way that you can just send off thousands of candidate solutions for evaluations, and then they would kind of map into new positions in this big grid. Hopefully they don't all want to go into the same spot, then there's something wrong with the exploration. And this could be done at least in a, like a semi-parallel way, and maybe there are like some kind of conflicts that need to be resolved, but in any case, that's kind of one simple way. I think maybe like the simplicity of this type of approach has been preferred over going more complex, like, you know, I mentioned these island models. I think they were quite interesting and explored a bit back in the days, but I haven't seen so much work on that recently. But I agree, these things become a challenge when you get really many parallel solutions. But another aspect that's been kind of maybe more the bottleneck in this morphology evolution is the physics simulation itself. It takes so much time that kind of, if you can parallelize that, that's maybe the kind of the first step to take, so before you need to think about those things.
Do you have a moment for one? I can hold it.
Yeah, I think let's quick one maybe.
Sure. Yeah, one of the things that I'm interested in is using real world data, but then trying to figure out how to evolve an agent, something with agency that can then pick and choose from that reported data for its own perception. So it's not just standard machine learning where you're shoving data through a network and training on that, right? The reason this is cool is because you're allowing the agent to have agency in its own environment, have perception and action. But I haven't seen anybody working on maybe a mix of, okay, here's a bunch of real world data we've recorded. Also, how do you get an agent to have agency and learn on it?
It's kind of to selectively choose from that recorded data.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thought. Yeah, I haven't thought so much about that. I mean, like, there's what Eggy talked about, this multi-body controller approach, that like you train one controller, but that's like what you mentioned also, like you just feed it with all the data you have seen and try to make something general. But to kind of leave that to the agent to explore, that's an interesting experiment. Next experiment, right? Thanks. Okay, maybe now, in the interest of time, we should not make the break too long. So
I mean, I have to set it up, so like
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
If you want to follow along on the demo, I would recommend opening Visual Studio already. And then, like, it is quite easy to I will do it for you, but if you want to follow along in the laptop, open Visual Studio, then we can 5 minutes break from now.
Yeah.
Second question. You've been working on this whole time, trying to download all the dependencies. I finally got everything downloaded.
Oh,
And but my issue was, so I'm on the. We tried to run it, then I got a call them. But I don't know if it's like, oh, you need an extra library or. You loaded, okay, shared objects. What did you do?
Oh, you tried to run the executable.
What was that not how I'm supposed to?
No, this should be, but I think you need Unity.
Oh, I'm just, okay. Installing the standalone executable. It's. Seems completed and it's easily run by the EMR package.
Yes, so the EMR package runs, so if you run the code inside the Git that you run, then it will use that executable. And if you want to use it to download the Unity,
I can talk to you a bit more. I just need to fix one thing, and then I'll get back to you. That's okay.
So I won't require to have Unity downloaded in the demo I'm giving now.
Oh, okay.
So you
So
can
we still
run
do
it.
something.
Yes, okay. So if you want to run it quickly.
See, all right, so if I, so.
Yeah.
Where's, EMR dot.
Oh, there are example.
Let's start it. Testing functionality. Ah, okay, this is the right thing.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So here you can.
Thank you.
So they want the link to the GitHub in the Discord channel. Do you have the Discord open, or should I try to? The ALIFE Discord? Yeah, no. Okay, I can move.
I think that has been 5 minutes, or I at least don't see. I mean, I don't see anyone I don't see. So yeah, usually we would go to a bit of explanation of how the demo, our Unity project works, why it works and why it's cool. But I think I will just go step by step how to easily set it up, and then maybe not show, but explain how you can easily make new modules and add it to the project so that it will you can create your own modules and then try to deal with it. To create your own modules, you do need Unity itself. To run the program, you don't. You just need Visual Studio. You will download an executable, and then it will do magic. So, setting up. So you basically just create a new project. I'm gonna do it different. Sorry about this. I'm
Do you see the chat also again?
yeah. Oh no. Oh, okay.
What link did I paste the GitHub?
Oh, why isn't?
Output range, maybe the resolution.
Oh no.
Okay.
Yeah, I mirrored the display, but I guess I have to join.
So this exactly bring the point to this one and this one.
So which link could not be? Oh, it's dark.
Let's go back to the style. Yeah. Excellent.
What link was?
Now to deploy this screen, so.
Oh, I'm sharing the wrong screen. Oh. Yeah. Okay. So in Visual Studio, you can just open a new project and oh, where's my mouse? But I cannot see. I would try to mirror the screen, but I couldn't. Okay,
Laptop.
We need to find a better solution.
yes.
Okay, let's connect to that one.
But then,
Yeah, okay, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Yes.
So or does that work? I think then you can show everything on your Zoom screen, right?
oh,
Right, everything
okay.
you share on the screen. That should help.
Yes. Okay, wait. Okay. Go away. Okay. Yes. So in the new project, if you just git clone the project here, then no, this won't. Oh. Okay, I will just show the slides and hope you can follow the slides. Should be good enough. Git clone the project. Then after that, you have to create a virtual environment to do the to download the packages in Visual Studio. That's quite easy. You after Ctrl+Shift+P, you will create a new environment. It will create an environment in the .vn directory. And to install it, you can just run pip install, and then in the new git, you first have to activate the environment, the virtual environment. But then if you do pip install, of within the GitHub environment, there's an EMR package. You just have to pip install that one. Oh, Jesus. Okay. Yes, so I already installed it, so I'm not gonna do it now. You do have to download the executable. Luckily, there's a script for that. So if you go to the example script, which is in the evolving modular robotics, and then example script, and then download the latest executable. You have a Unity executable, which you can use to run the experiments on. It might take some time. And then after you're done with that, so if you've downloaded the executable and want to run some examples, so there is a test script as well in the example directory. So you go to you run that one. So in the example, there is a one that's called test EMR, and that just of course for me it fails now. That will run just a list of tests to make sure that everything is running. Okay. And then in the example directory, there are also other example files, and now I hope it will run so you could at least see something. So just by running the evolve modular robot script, you will eventually see random robots showing up. The evolutionary algorithm is now already being run, but it's the first generation, so there are now random robots. As you might see, it's quite slow, and in real experiments, yeah, that sucks, but you can do it without showing it. On my laptop, it's faster, but there's a delay with the Zoom. So yeah, I was hoping to show how easy it is to set up, but everything failed basically. I think I can now go through the slides to maybe show what it can do. So in the first generation, it might look a bit weird, and then after a while, yeah, it is not all powerful. Some cases it will just result in a very simple robot, but there are other things you can do with it and add other modules, as I said before. No, I wanted to show this one. So with this similar morphology, you can eventually result in these kind of robots with any varying types of shapes. But we also have example scripts for these kind of robots where it's centipede-like robot instead of modular one.
It's also like the advantage of the Unity thing. It's relatively easy to customize a bit with overlays and nothing.
Yeah, so if you eventually would download the Unity project, you would have indeed easy ways to create new modules and to add it. So there is, for example, in the Unity a module helper script where if you create a new module, you need to say where it is possible to connect to the module and which parts of the module are customizable, or which parts of the module are movable. And yeah, we just ask you to try it out. I'm really sorry for this mess.
Demo effect.
Yes.
So you can also, I mean, we have this Discord channel, so if you want to try things and run into some problems, we can try to help you out there.
So yeah, we're already also 4 minutes out of time, or
Yeah, and now we're into the coffee break, so I guess we have to.
it's a coffee break.
Yeah, so I mean, it's tutorial isn't, or I mean, the keynote isn't starting quite yet, but we can officially close the tutorial. And if you have any further questions, feel free to hang out a bit and discuss with us. That's perfectly fine. So yeah, thank you for coming and listening.